Welcome to the Purple Rock Survivor Podcast. I'm John, my co-host is Andy, and this week we're discussing one of the saddest Survivor firsts imaginable, Sandra Diaz-Twine being voted out of the game. As much as I feel like I prepared myself for this, I still feel like I was not ready for this. How about you, Andy?
I mean, can you ever be ready? I mean, we, as you say, have never had any experience with it. Yeah, honestly, it's a bit of mixed emotions because she was treated so well this season that it's kind of like a touching send-off. We got the applause we asked for, a good show by them. But, I mean, she's still gone, and that's not good. And I know some people are like, well, what did you expect? It's like, well, for one, Strawman, I am doing a voice of, you expected her to be gone a long time ago. So to expect that she would continue to keep going is no more unlikely than the fact that she had. For two, I just like this show better when Sandra Diaz-Twine is on it.
Yeah, I don't know that I had expectations. It was more just I want to keep enjoying Sandra on my show, and now she's not on there. So it's, the crushing disappointment of now I don't get to watch Sandra next week.
Yeah, and like seeing her escape, what was it, 4 tribal councils? That was pretty thrilling. So, 5th would have also been thrilling, and so would a 6th and a 7th. It's not always about the win. Too many people are focused on championships. The journey matters too. Also, it would have been awesome for a championship. I mean, she's got to.
Count the rings. I feel like every week that we got past that first episode with Sandra was a bonus because predictions were pretty strongly in favor of Sandra going home very early. I mean, even the pre-game interviews, everyone was suggesting that they wanted to vote her out. And they had so many opportunities and it just wasn't happening. And, you just allow yourself to have that brief sliver of hope that, man, Sandra might actually make it really far in this game. And I think this episode was a nice little reminder of that, where it was very clear that Sandra was and should be the target. And there was just that glimmer of hope at the end, like, man, Sandra is really working her magic. Is this going to work? Of course it didn't.
Yeah, and this 6th episode mini story of Sandra was actually like a really great homage, and we've talked about it already in this podcast, and shared the quotes from other people. But this is the first time that Survivor really got to celebrate Sandra. Her first time, I mean, it's the first time. How much do you ever celebrate any first timers? Her second time, there was big personalities. She wasn't viewed as, the biggest threat, and that's how she was able to win. Here, from the very beginning and every episode since, people were paying respects to Sandra, and the show was, and that was great. So from that perspective, this season was great, for Sandra, even though it was only 6 episodes long. But, I'm a little bummed. And frankly, it's not just because Sandra won't be on the show anymore. I think because this episode did what, the Malcolm episode did a couple episodes ago. It's showing a bit more of what the season is going to be versus what we may have wanted it to be.
Yeah, and we discussed this before the season even started. It's just, there's always that fear that if there is enough fodder in the cast, that fodder can rise up and take out your stars. And we're not necessarily all the way there yet, but it's really starting to feel like we're heading down that path.
Yeah, and we actually fought against that idea because there also seemed that there was a lot of greatness on this season. Not so much anymore. And, that's something to talk about in the episode where the greatest left. And I do think that, whatever happens out this season, these 6 episodes, I think shut up at least, any of the haters that may be even marginally worth listening to. There might be the odd bandy-legged troll out there still trying to spit things, but most people are like, wow, that was something. And what was great about this episode, despite how it ended up, that's what this episode was about. It was a bunch of people finally giving her the respect and fear that she deserves. And, I kind of almost had to tip my hat to them. And my favorite part of last night, or I guess it was last night when we were recording, was when she makes her counter pitch to the group, to Ozzy and Andrea and Sarah. You see on their faces a mix of kind of like what we saw with Varna, right? A mix of awe and fear, because they're like, man, she has a point. And at the same time, that kind of reinforces, like, this is how she does it.
Yep.
It's like, she might be right, but we can't let ourselves be convinced by her because I can feel it already and it's just going to keep going.
Yeah, and it led to that confessional from Sarah, of all people, that was just really eloquently done, where she describes Sandra's technique and how, Sandra so calmly just she doesn't ever seem desperate. She always seems like she's just ready and willing to work with you. Here's a very rational plan I've come up with. I'm willing to do this with you guys. I'm here for you if you need me. I'm just going to lay it out there. And it didn't work necessarily, but as Sarah said, I could feel myself thinking like, oh yeah, this isn't a bad idea. Despite knowing that Sandra's this huge threat and exactly what Sandra's doing, she was still willing to be like, well, actually, she does make a point. Even though she shouldn't. That's how good Sandra is.
And frankly, Sandra was making a point. Like, yeah. I actually think, what she was saying might end up actually being prophetic. But at the same time, I get why you just gotta be like, no, you know what? If it turns against us, it turns against us.
Not today, Satan.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh my God, she's putting us under a whammy. This is how she does it. And I almost feel like that's like what was washing over their face. The fact that, cause I wouldn't be surprised if Ozzy hasn't spent a whole lot of time thinking about how Sandra's won Survivor twice, right?
Right.
And I think almost in that moment, he's like, wow, this is it. This is how it happened. It's not a fluke. And I hope that people have been, walking away from the season understanding that. Now, I'm sure a lot of people will just be like, well, she was just different this time. But no, like, we got to see front and center how Sandra has been able to succeed at Survivor all this time. And frankly, it might have happened again. Yeah, I'm not saying she could have won. Everybody thinks we're that deep in the Kool-Aid, but I'm also not saying she couldn't. In the end, what happened was she was swap screwed. It happens. It happens every season. Every season they have a swap for the most part. I guess some seasons the person actually does end up getting screwed, but it happens frequently. It's not a sign of a good player or bad player. In fact, frankly, a lot of times it is a sign of a good player. But other than that, everything we saw up to and including this episode where, as you say, it seemed like there was a sliver of daylight where it was like, is she going to do it again? This is what she does. And this is what she's always done and what she will always do.
Yeah. And it was kind of surprising. I think even in some previous seasons, I don't know how screwed she would have been in this situation. I think I've made this point a few weeks ago, and it's holding up. It was probably a little premature then, but it's holding up now. Somehow, those initial tribes still seem loyal to each other, and Sandra and Varner just seemed like the easy targets, and they were just willing to stick with that. There wasn't yet fractures in that initial tribe, which is amazing. And I think in most seasons there would have been, and she might have had a little more daylight.
Yeah, frankly, maybe if she was on the other side, there would have been some there, although she would have had more to work with as well. Which again, that's why it gets down to the swap. And frankly, if she had drawn no buff, she would have been immune and, I think would have been armed with something that could have kept her in the game one more day. Which I guess we can discuss a little later. But yeah, it's weird. Like every vote has been along tribal lines. Every single one.
Yeah, and especially in a returning player season, you wouldn't think the initial tribes really mattered all that much. It's just a buff that you're wearing, right?
Yeah, and I think, like, and we're going to get into this as well, and people are starting to, be concerned about all the swaps and the 3 players and all that. But in past seasons, the swap was an effective tool breaking this stuff up. And this season, no, it's just been like, hey, cool, you handed us another victim for the pagonging.
Hey, game changer.
Yeah.
We're changing it back to the old school game.
It's weird. And it feels like, and that's something just to remember when we're evaluating it. This isn't generally how swaps always go. And sometimes, yeah, there's the one person that swap screwed, but then things break. And it's clear that you just don't want to lose that first challenge. And even there, like last season, nobody who swapped onto a tribe where they were at a disadvantage went home in the pre-merge portion.
Right.
So traditionally, yeah, the swap has just been a way of like breaking up that initial alliance. And this season, no, not so much. I've enjoyed the season so far, largely because it was, the main story throughout the entire 6 episodes was, wow, Sandra is great. That's incredibly gratifying. There's also been some big things. So I've enjoyed a lot. I do have the feeling that this might prove us right when we always say, you know what? pre-merge isn't the time to have the great season.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to get into is, all the people that say, oh, the pre-merge in such and such season sucked. Well, yeah, but sometimes you need that to happen to have a great post-merge. And I feel like the opposite's happening here. Like all your big explosive moments are getting pulled forward because we're losing all these actual game changers. And then, at the end, maybe the other players that are left rise up, but there's still certainly some talent left here, but feels like the odds are much slimmer now.
Yeah, imagine if these first 6 boots were, some of the lesser lights, that we weren't excited about. People, 5-6 years from now, is like, oh, pre-merge sucked. We just gotten rid of a bunch of people that we didn't care about. It's like, that's what you want, man!
Right.
Do you guys watch movies? Like, oh man, I hate the Avengers. Why did Captain America last till the end? So predictable.
If only that red shirt that had shot at him succeeded in the very first scene. It would have been so great.
Yeah, no, this might be the season of like the red shirt revenge, except that, Mana keeps losing.
Right.
So let's get into more specifically into the episode. Did you really think she was going to get out of this? Like, at what was kind of your emotional journey?
No, I think I was hoping. It felt so strongly against her. And then we were getting so much exposure of Sandra, and it just started to make me worry. I was like, okay, well, this feels like this could be it. And you wanted to believe that plan, her pitches, the tie thing at Tribal, like, okay, maybe this will work, but I don't think I ever allowed myself to believe just because it was such a long shot. I think the only way I could have envisioned it really happening is if Ty had played the idol in some way to take out Ozzy, and it just seemed like a long shot, and it seemed like something that we would have had a little more advanced knowledge of.
Yeah, so like when swap first happens and Zeke immediately makes his move against Sandra, at that point I'm like, you know what? She might be safe. Just because, usually when the episode tells you that early that somebody's going home, they're not. But then as the news started tightening, it was like, I was thinking she might be able to play the tie thing to her advantage. When Zeke was spilling the beans to Varner, I'm like, this could be it. But then when she went the other way with it to try and like get rid of Ty, I was like, nah, damn, that's not the way.
Right.
And that's because we had the knowledge of his 2 idols, right? Not because it necessarily was the wrong play. But yeah, the play, what I was hoping to see is her go to Ty with that information, make him feel paranoid, and then, get him to idol out Ozzy. But it's like, and that's what, we were looking at Tribal Council, but it was like, but they still don't have the votes. Those 4 other people could be voting for Sandra. It doesn't matter if Ty plays the idol. Right. Unless he played it for her. But since she wasn't working with him close enough, I didn't think it was going to happen. But I will say at Tribal Council, I did kind of lean in the edge of my seat just a bit. Not because it felt like there was a way she could get out, but I've seen her escape when it didn't feel like there was a way she could get out. So I'm like, hey, let's see what she does.
Right. Occasionally the Hail Mary gets caught, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, she walked away from the Tony thing, no votes. She walked away from Malcolm, no votes. I was like, oh, let's see. And then Ty starts going seemingly crazy at that Tribal Council. I'm like, oh my God, is she doing it again? Is everybody just going to switch their votes to like not her? But when Ty's vote, her vote for Ty was the first one that Probst brought out, I was like, it's Sandra.
We're done. One thing you briefly touched on there that I wanted to bring up again. This episode, as you said, was a fitting homage to Sandra, as was the arc in general of this season so far. But they really just showed you in fine detail how great she is, because we see the scene of Zeke talking to Varner. You guys are safe. We're going Ty. And Varner's just eating it up. Oh, okay. It's Ty. Sandra, we're safe. We're safe. And Sandra's like, nah, we're really not, because that doesn't make any sense. And she immediately sees right through it. And I love that we got to see that. They didn't try quite as hard to surprise us with the Sandra boot, which is fine, because in doing so, we got to see how well Sandra plays and how good she is at this game.
Yeah, and I think, on our site, people brought up, I believe it was Rhea, that, they didn't try to make her look bad at all this episode in the way that Boots usually takes some heat, some blame for their exit. They didn't throw in overconfident confessionals. I mean, she did say, I'm okay, I'm not going to go home, but that's what she does.
Hey, I think she says that every week.
Yeah, and she wasn't doing it to the end. It was just as she's assess this bad situation for herself. She's like, no, I can do this, which is good. You should have confidence in yourself. Sometimes it works. It has worked for her a lot. I believe Tasha had the same thing in Cambodia. It worked for her. So that's not ego. It is ego. It's not, it's not shown as like the arrogant, comeuppance at it. And yeah, throughout, as you say, they show her realizing this isn't quite working out for her, making pitches, and people are like, getting back to the tribal council with Ty, I do wonder, and this is maybe just picking at it, it's like, what was he doing, right? What was he doing with like mentioning Ozzy's name and like pretending to agree with Sandra? I was like, is it possible that Ty was playing a game against Sandra?
Yeah.
Was that subterfuge? And I gotta say, like, normally, because it's Ty, I would say no, of course not. He can't do that, and he can't do things very effectively. But, I mean, he voted for her and didn't play his idol. So that's the one thing is kind of like, did they fill him in eventually once they were like, this dude, you're ruining the whole plan, which that's on them. That's not on Ty. You guys never gave Ty a plan other than Sandra. What else is he supposed to say?
Yeah. In watching it initially, I was like, wow, what is Ty doing? But once the votes were read, I went, okay, was that all just a big ruse? Like, I'm pretty sure they had somehow planned that. I can't imagine they planned it to that degree, but it's really the only story that makes sense, right? It's hard to imagine Ozzy saying, yeah, we'll suggest it's me, then we'll flip it on Ty, and everybody will say, yeah, we'll do Ty, and then, we'll all vote Sandra.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not suggesting necessarily that it was that detailed a plan. It might have just been more like, dude, we're trying not to tell Varner and Sandra just in case, because, she's the devil.
Sure.
She can trick us. So, you gotta not say that. And then he would be like, oh, okay. And kind of maybe freestyled on his own. Cause it's not like he was like really brilliant at tribal council or anything like that. But maybe, that was him trying to also dupe her to a degree. I mean, now she suggested in her exits that maybe that, but Ty was actually thinking of it, and the reason why the vote ended up going against her is Ozzy got spooked when his name comes up from Ty, who's fidgeting with his pocket. I'm not sure that was it. Just cause, like, he didn't play his idol. Like, he had two of them to spare. If he certainly thought that, like, he had really screwed up that badly at tribal council and, like, made a move against Ozzy that failed, and so that he doesn't vote for Ozzy, I think he plays an idol. Yep. So, I have a feeling we'll actually never know the answer to that question. And frankly, in a couple of weeks, I probably won't care. But that's just one possible read on that. Is there anything else that Sandra could have done to save herself, though?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it was the luck of the draw. She ended up where she did. And once she was there, I mean, if she had a little more time, if she'd been in the Devi position and she could come into a tribe that already had gotten that first vote and the lines had been drawn, maybe even then it's potentially tough just because she's going into a tribe. Presumably like Varner gets voted out instead. And at that point, what's she going to do? She's still going to be the next target potentially, but maybe because she's the last and the only target, maybe then she can say, hey, I'm your +1. Let's do it. Let's make a move.
If she had gone to exile, here's what could have happened for her. The choices that Debbie gets, make a fake idol, get the double vote, or an advantage for your tribe. And that's the one. And I think she would have picked that.
Yeah.
Because she realizes that she just needs to be immune.
Right.
And then get to the merge. In fact, and there's an argument that maybe that's the one Debbie should have picked. If she picks that, then they probably win, and then the merge is coming up after that. Obviously, she can't fully plan, but we pretty much know that the merge will be the next because of what Sarah Dawn Thomas got in episode 1.
Right.
I doubt they would give her a potential immunity for, a tribal council that she might not attend. Mm-hmm. Which would happen in the pre-merge phase if she were to win immunity. That for herself is just like, if she could have worked over Ty and got him to play her idol for her. The problem with that and suggesting that's just what she should have done is, why would she know that Ty has an idol?
Or two.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, obviously people were worried that Ty was a high candidate for getting idols. She knows that he's already demonstrated the ability to get one in this season, along with his first. But that would have been throwing, away any attempt to work with Ozzy and Andrea at the shot that Ty might have an idol and be willing to play it on you. That's a pretty long odds play.
Right.
So I can't necessarily suggest it. And frankly, I'm also comfortable answering the question, was there anything else she could have done? With the simple answer of no, because she didn't do it. If anyone would have figured out if there was anything else it could have done, it would have been Sandra. Who am I to ever suggest something to her? I would be like somebody shipped it on a boat to give her advice.
No one would have deigned to do such a thing to the queen.
So was this the right move for the other group to get rid of her?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been the right move for a while. It would have made sense at any point along the line until we got here. So yeah, it's fine. It is the right move. It's disappointing to us as viewers, but sure, if you're that other group that's opposed to her, probably the right move.
Well, I'll say the caveat. There was one tribal council where it was not the right move, and that is, of course, the tribal council where JT tried to make it that move.
Right.
That was the time where, no, you don't target Sandra. You vote with Sandra and the rest of your group and get rid of Sierra Dawn Thomas. And it also wasn't the right move for the other group because, yeah, Malcolm was the right move in that sense. But I will say, much credit to Zeke for this one. And I'm not saying that, the other people wouldn't have also gotten there independently, but instantly he recognized that she's not a day 39 threat. She's a all game threat, and better just to get rid of that and see where it goes from there. So good for him for, respecting, Sandra, not being, some student of the game that thinks that she just is, somebody who gets by failing.
Yeah. And, the thing is, I can actually see both sides of that, because the fact that she's such a big threat almost makes her a little appealing to keep around as long as she's completely neutered. But that's the big worry, is that you don't know that you can completely neuter Sandra. Even if she's down to it just being Sandra, she's been in that position before and she's survived. I mean, she will just gladly glom onto another alliance that needs her as a vote, as long as it advances her game, and she could have done it again. So it's always dangerous, even if it's just an alliance of one and it's Sandra, to keep her around.
Yeah, I think the one person there that really could have thought about keeping Sandra, but obviously not at the cost of pissing off everybody else he's working with, is Ozzy. Ozzy is quickly running out of all shields. They're gone. He's got none. Ozzy is clearly the top dog in the game right now in terms of fame, in terms of, threat level, in terms of ability. There's no way for Ozzy to hide, so that Dolphin Boy better swim a lot and hope that all the challenges post-merge are in the water. Even if it's just a puzzle, put it in the water. Just let me assemble it in the water. Because, Suri, I guess, maybe? But I don't know if post-merge Suri is as big a threat as Ozzy. She's the threat I guess you go after when Ozzy's won immunity, but yeah. So for him, maybe, but at the same time, it's well, what does that get you? That's not enough. And he'd lose to her.
Yeah, and also I don't know that he is necessarily a good enough player to recognize that would have been of benefit to him.
See, I get, and obviously, it's a blank stare or whatever, but I almost get the feeling, and a bit of an interview, that he kind of, I kind of see what she's saying, but at the same time, like I said, the very fact that she's got me thinking this way tells me that I need to get rid of her, because, she's that good. I guess one benefit to her going now, for some people, is every week we've just been just beating the same drum of making fun of people who had bad Sandra opinions. And maybe at some point we would have run out of material. This isn't that day. You got any last words for the haters?
You know what? Here's a hot take for you. I don't know that there are actually any Sandra haters left. I think they've been vanquished. I'm not going to go on the Survivor Facebook page to verify that, but I'm just going to assume they are all gone now.
I got one left.
Okay, go for it.
Do the Pearl Clutchers this season, who are always look at what happens when she's so dangerous, putting herself in so much danger now that she's playing from the front, and she's got such a big ego. She didn't do that this episode. And look what happened. Maybe, just maybe, Sandra was taking control all season long because that's what she needed to do to survive. She couldn't let other people take the lead because they wouldn't lead her where she needed to go. This is what happens when Sandra is respected, and also when she goes to tribal council a lot at the beginning. She can't hide, so she didn't. And this time she had to, and it didn't work.
Yeah, I think we had kind of made that point earlier in the season. Sure, great. Try to play under the radar as Sandra now. It's not possible anymore. Everyone knows you've won twice. You can't hide. The thing is, she survived in these early challenges or these early tribal councils by not even trying. She went the other direction and just said, here I am. I'm Sandra. I'm out in front. Come get me. And no one did. So you can say all you want that she should have tried to tone it down and stuck to her traditional strategy and hid behind other targets, but it wasn't going to work. She's too big of a target now.
Well, how about this? Going onto that beach with these people, she did not step out in front and she wasn't talking about the queen stays the queen and all that stuff. And these people still noticed that she was a huge ass target. So she wasn't putting the target on herself in her previous tribal councils. That motherfucker was there. She was just realizing the target was on her. And yeah, so it's like the target was always there. This is what this episode proved. The target was always there. Her brash ego that rubs you the wrong way didn't put it there. It didn't make her play any worse. It was there, and it eventually got her. And frankly, I think she avoided it getting her by playing out in front.
Yep.
So that's my last word, just because I think this episode underlined it. Now we need to say goodbye.
Oh, all right. So for every player this season, as they're leaving the game, we are giving their career highlight, the thing that defines the player's legacy. Oh boy, this is a tough one.
There's so much.
There really is.
I feel like I've been going first a lot, so I'm going to let you do that this time.
Okay. Well, and it's actually a nice transition because we're sort of plays into what we were just talking about. So the entire reason that Sandra has to play this way, that she played successfully this way, the career highlight is the second win, Heroes versus Villains. Not just the win, but wearing the tiara, throwing up the 2, rubbing it in Russell's face, just gloating after that Heroes versus Villains win, kind of set the tone for what she could do when she eventually came back. And I don't know whether she knew she would eventually come back, but if it weren't for that, if it weren't for setting herself up as the queen and she knows she's great, she's going to show everybody, I don't know that we get this.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's probably true. Winning a second time would be a pretty big highlight for most people. So hard to deny that. Yeah, and Tribal Council just kind of stunting on Russell, and yeah, as you say, at the finale especially, even though, he's all sad and all this, she still shuts him up, and then he goes on his stupid, we gotta let the fans decide, the game is broken, and she's just like, go wash your ass.
And that's the nice thing about Sandra, is she really doesn't care about you're so sad that you lost. Same thing we discussed with the fair play thing last week. Like, oh, that's terrible that, your grandma died. Why don't your buddy jump in the water over there? I don't want you to win this reward.
Yeah. And it's like, she's got no time for bad people. If you're bad, to her, she's not going to turn around and be sympathetic to you. She's not going to be Christina comforting Colton while he's rolling around after he told her to go kill herself.
Yep.
That ain't Sandra. So related to that, my moment is, in Heroes vs. Villains when she's lying there on the shelter, next to Parvati, and Russell's trying to, be the big man and taunting and all of that. And at this point, Russell's riding pretty high. I think he actually has immunity at this point. And Parvati's actually had to, kowtow to him a little bit. Not a lot, but less than she had before because, he had taken out Danielle. She's a little, vulnerable at this point. And, he's trying to have his moment and be the big man. And he's like, just like Rob, you're either with me or you're against me. And she just like, whatever. I'm against you, Russell. That right there symbolizes everything that's great about Sandra Diaz Twine. Now, obviously, what Russell doesn't know, and what adds to the moment is she's got that immunity idol in her bra at the time, And yeah, she's just like, no, she's not afraid of you, Russell. And she was never afraid of you. And she used you. She used you to get rid of Coach to get her to the merge. She used you to get rid of Jerry to get to the finals. She played him like a fool, and he still knows it. In the recesses of his dank little troll mind, when he thinks he can somehow score points on Twitter, he knows. And he will always know that she was never afraid of him, and she is better than him.
And it still bothers him. It drives him insane to this day. It's been years since Heroes vs. Villains. He is still salty about it.
And there's nothing he could do. His third time, when people had finally seen him play, did people show him the respect of Sandra? No! They threw a challenge to get rid of his ass, and didn't feel any pity for him as he cried on his way out on the Redemption Island duel. Yeah, that's you, Russell. That's what happens when the Emperor is shown to have no clothes. Whereas Sandra gets a full ovation on her way out. And everybody, including the young boy who knows nothing, who you tried to delude, comes out saying, yeah, she was amazing. Caveat, everybody but JT. So, yeah, bitter losers to the left and Sandra to the right. So that's my moment. Just her standing up to Russell when nobody else would. Like, Jerry actually gives a confessional after, like, what are you doing? Oh my God, why would you do that to Russell? And Sandra's like, 'cause he ain't shit. That's why I would do it.
Mm-hmm. And it's sad that we have to leave highlights like I Can Get Loud Too on the floor here. But we have to. There's just too many choices.
Last week with the sugar. That's the highlight.
I mean, you can point to so many different things.
I'm gonna screw you and Burton too.
Yes. And again, as I mentioned, Fairplay's grandma, she even suggests, and I don't remember if it was like a secret scene or something. I don't even know if she's really dead. She's probably not really even dead or something like that. Like, damn, she's so good.
Please, everybody, I mean, we've probably listed off a bunch, but explain your favorite Sandra moment in the comments. This is the healing time for all of us.
And speaking of which,
yeah,
let's think about the rest of the season now that we've had these tragic losses week after week here. How hopeful are you?
0% hopeful. I have no hope.
Yeah, I mean, coming into the season, I had my big four that I was very excited about, and it was Sandra, Tony, Malcolm, and Cirie. Cirie's the last one standing. Cirie, coincidentally, the only person on this season that has yet to go to Tribal Council. Challenge me, Cirie! It's finally happening! I still do not feel confident that even if she gets through the entire pre-merge immune, I don't know how many episodes she lasts after that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Cirie's already off the season, and that's not like just negative, like, oh, everything bad's gonna happen. It's like, she's not really on this season. So, that does not bode well. And there's obviously reasons. As you say, she hasn't gone to Tribal Council. The narrative tends to stay with the teams that do. But I feel like, if she was doing really well, there'd be a little bit more check-ins, right? They always check in with the other tribe.
Yep.
And she hasn't been the featured player. They check in with the tribes when there's new tribes after swaps. Again, not really Cirie. So, yeah, and so that's what it's getting at. It's not just that Sandra is gone. It's that Sandra is gone and the other players, that we liked are all, our top ones are gone too. And the next level of players that we liked aren't really on this season very much. You know? Sierra, it hasn't been on. Andrea hasn't been on. And Andrea, I was honestly willing to forgive a bit until this episode, where when Sandra's doing this, we get to hear from Ozzy, we get to hear from Sarah. Obviously, we heard from Zeke because he was kind of the prime mover. We hear from Ty because he's got his other thing going on. We don't hear from Andrea. They don't care what Andrea's perspective in any of this is, which tells me that Andrea ain't doing anything in this game. So yeah, I mean, for me, it's not just like picking out like the worst people. I genuinely think that the alliance that will control this game are Brad, Sierra, Don Thomas, Troy, Sarah, Ty, and then like Haley as kind of their hanger on. And that's not just because I picked the people that I'm least interested in. Like, the show has made effort to show the ties between these people, Sierra, Don Thomas, Brad, and Ty, that's obvious.
Yep.
We got the scene this week with Brad and Troy. We got the scene last week with Troy and Sarah. Like, I think that's what's happening. And,
yeah, not ideal, to put it lightly. It's really just the players that you mentioned that are that next tier that we at least had hope for that could step up if these bigger stars went down early. The Aubreys of the world. Where was Aubrey this episode?
Yeah, we got to hear her, like, immediately post-tribal because she was blindsided. I will say, like, there's been reason why she wasn't primary in the narrative. And frankly, we found the final reason this episode. You know, her big stories apparently were her alliance with Malcolm and her rivalry with Sandra. Well, neither of those paid off, so I get leaving her out. But at the same time, she's gone to tribal council, like, what was it, 4 times? And still barely on the show.
Yeah. I'm not incredibly hopeful. Zeke showed a few signs of life tonight. But even if you're hoping for some of these other players to step up, as you mentioned, there's all these other players that are kind of looking like they're aligned as it is. You need to have enough numbers on the other side to break that up, and I just don't know that you're going to get there.
Yeah, like, if this story has been dominated by Sandra, and some people, I think, rightly have suggested that one silver lining might be that, airtime is going to open up. Because obviously, if most of it's dedicated to one person, that person's not there, along with fewer people in general not being there, then there should be some more to go around. But it's just like, the time that they have allotted has been to these others. And, some of it there's explanations. You gotta show the stuff with Ty. Every time an idol is found, they're gonna show it. Which for a while also explained Troy. But there's been more Troy than just that. Ugh. Obviously the Brad stuff is there, and I think it should be. I think he's playing well. I don't even mind if he does well. But on that, obviously people are comparing this to All-Stars. And everybody's like, see, all the great ones left, and, the lesser lights going into the season did well, and everybody hates it. Except for me. And so they'll be like, oh, you're gonna be a hypocrite? But it's like, there's a difference. The reason why that doesn't bother me is because as you're watching All-Stars, and, during and after, you realize, oh, Rob Mariano is better at this than all of them, and also, he's more entertaining than all those other people. So, it didn't feel like a gap for me. Whereas, I feel like if Brad goes on to win, which is what I feel like is going to happen now, he might play a very good game, an admirable game. He might fully on deserve it, not just in the way that everybody deserves who wins. I don't think it's going to be a very interesting game, is the problem. Frankly, I think for him to be successful, he kind of has to eliminate the interesting part, right? Yeah. He has to keep his powder dry, and he has to just kind of do the sensible thing each way and team up with these boring people who are imbued with tons of advantages and idols, and just kind of march to the end. And as we said, the fireworks are at the beginning of the show, and then at the end, I don't know, what are we getting? The flute solo? So that's where I'm worried. It's not just who is going to do well, it's that I think it won't be that interesting when it happens.
Yeah, I'm thinking the exact same thing. But if I had to pick who's sitting in pole position right now, it's probably Brad. And the disappointing thing about that is that Brad's path to the end involves probably the people I'm least interested in seeing in this season. And as you said, it might just be a boring path to the end. Maybe he just joins up with them and they take out all the actual threats, and Brad is the last one standing. The worry really for me is just that, as I said, I don't see enough people that will step up to oppose Brad, because I don't know that he is an out in front type of target when there's still a few other targets remaining. And then by the time you realize, oh, we should take out Brad, it's probably too late by then.
Yeah, because then you get to kind of the Redemption Island situation where it's like, yeah, well, maybe we should take out Rob, but people on the other side are still more dangerous because juries vote for, the underdog. So we got to get them. And then it's like, oh, but now this person there. And then Brad probably could win some immunities as well, because the other people that are good at challenges, won't be there. And he has proven that he's been pretty good so far. Pretty well rounded too, right? He did the slingshot thing. He's had some strength. He's done some puzzles. So yeah, I could see an immunity run. And like I said, I think he's Ty's closest idol, and Ty has 2 of those idols. So yeah. And Frank, if he does really well and he impresses, I will, applaud him the entire way. I like seeing people be good at Survivor, but I also just feel like, he just won't be that interesting. And frankly, I feel like he should not be interesting. Like he should actively try not to be interesting.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we've seen too many seasons recently where that was the path to victory and was not ideal to watch.
Exactly. So that's where I'm at with the season. And, again, it's not just like negative, or at least I don't think it's just negative feelings because, I'm disappointed with the recent outcome. It's just like, I feel like that's the story that's being stitched together. But maybe there's still hope. Maybe something good will happen. Maybe that'll be the big alliance and somebody exciting will be able to, topple them. I mean, I suppose one advantage is, this isn't exactly the Survivor Elite or the Brain Trust of, So what would we hope to win? And I'm more interested, I mean, you could throw out just like, hey, this would be the best scenario, but I'm kind of more interested in what, like, could we plausibly hope for? Because I feel like hoping that Cirie does well is, a fool's errand.
Yeah.
I think Sandra had a better shot at doing well this season than her, frankly. I think the same for Andrea and Aubrey. I'm written off them as contending for, winning. They could still have a highlight or two to go. What do you got?
As I said before the season, Cirie just has the toughest path to victory, and it's certainly great for her that she hasn't gone to tribal council yet. It's nice that she's not going to have demonstrated her loyalties in any votes, but after that first vote, people will see where she lies, and I don't see her going very far. I can't craft a scenario in my head where she gets enough votes on her side that she can somehow get into a dominant position and then maintain control without becoming a target herself.
Yeah. I'd say like in a vacuum, maybe there's still potential that, she can basically suck up what, Sandra had, right? Those people that Sandra had on her side, and maybe some of the other people who realize they're on the outs with Brad, maybe after like Ozzy's taken out or something. In a vacuum, I could see that happening. But edit-wise, if that's what was going to happen, we would have had more Cirie by now. Even if it was just, her narrating for a second of how life is so great on these winning tribes.
Yeah.
We're not getting that.
Cirie's a delight. Like, why are we not being shown Cirie? It's not a good sign. So of the other players remaining, maybe Michaela? I mean, Michaela's the one that's been the most visible, I guess. But I think her visibility has basically been, hey, Michaela's entertaining. So.
Yeah, but maybe not so great for playing at Survivor.
Sure.
Especially like amongst people who I think she's the youngest person out there too, right?
Probably.
So yeah, I kind of feel the same about Michaela. For me, like the immediate thing I'm most invested in is Jeff Varner making the jury. If he doesn't, that will be the next big disappointment. Like I've resigned myself to the fact that Cirie could go at any time and she's not going to go deep. I resigned myself that, just Andrea and Aubrey are not, factors this season. But if Varner's taken out before the jury, that will be the next stab to the heart. And I also kind of think it's going to happen.
Well, we know the merge is at 13, right? That's what Sierra's clue was. All right. And so we only have one more vote to go then, right?
One more. Well, yeah. Merge, of course, as Jeff Varner knows, not always the jury.
This is true. So. Yes. So are you rooting for merge or jury?
Jury.
Okay.
He's never made the jury. I mean, I'm actually rooting for him to go far, but step one.
At a minimum, right. Yeah.
If somebody goes home and even though that person is Varner and, Jeff says, you're the first member of the jury, I'll at least kind of feel like at least he did that because he's never done that. So that's the first thing I'm hoping for. The other thing, like just in the realm of plausibility, and you got to it before, maybe like I think Zeke is the person I'm cheering for to win. I mean, like Varner, I'd like to cheer for win, but I just don't see it. Although he's present enough in the narrative that I suppose it's possible. That said, his role in the narrative has largely been, to remind us of the greatness of Sandra. And he's been to 5 tribal councils. He's going to be present somewhat. Whereas, Zeke's story began tonight. He's been somewhat present in the other episodes. Nothing big, but enough that you remember he's on the season. And I like Zeke. And frankly, I think he would be far more interesting than all the people I, discussed as probably being the power players this season. I'm not, by any stretch predicting it, but like that's something I feel like I could still hope for without feeling like I'm just, closing my eyes to what's happening.
Yeah. I mean, if you're looking for someone that's been a little bit featured in this season, and as you mentioned, really there wasn't a whole lot of reason to show Zeke until now. So if this is his story starting, it's possible.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to, but yeah, it's plausible. So, yeah, I think my main rooting interest right now, for long-term success, or even, mid-short term is Varner and Zeke. The other thing I hope for is, before they go, it'd be nice to get a little more out of those people we like.
Yeah, I really want to see more of Cirie and Michaela, regardless of how long they last. They're, my rooting interests. I'm not super confident that they're going to make it very far, but I at least want to see some of them before they go.
All right. So, if we feel like we're heading towards the doomsday scenario for the season, has the show messed up? Is this something to be blamed on the show, or is it just kind of the way the cookie crumbles sometimes?
I mean, in terms of casting, probably yes, because if your goal is to have the big names and the previous winners and those sorts of people get far in the game, they did not do a great job of filling out this cast, because you have to have an overwhelming number of stars and big names and winners in order to prevent the, less thans from thinking, hey, I would like to get all these people out, and having the numbers to do it. So from that perspective, yeah, that's a failure.
Yeah, and here I'll give a bit of a mea culpa, because in the preseason it was like, I think the era of, targeting the stars might be over. And, I cited recent evidence, but, as we see the season, there's differences. And I think the difference is, and I was hinting at this a couple weeks ago with Malcolm, and then other people have been talking about it, it's got to be one or the other, right? It's either a full-on actual all-stars or also Rands. Either way can be successful. And that's why in Cambodia, it didn't feel like they were targeting the big, stars. That a lot of the, lesser threats, if not, low, not stars, but lesser threats, were going home early in Cambodia. And somebody like Spencer, who was viewed as a big threat, went all the way to the end. Now, obviously, he was a little targeted earlier, but he made it and went all the way to the end. Jeremy was, not necessarily invisible. He went to the end. But the difference is, Second Chance was, all, these definitionally losers, right?
Right.
Nobody who had won the game, nobody who had come back before. So, for the most part, they were all people who had enough star power that people voted for them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, so there wasn't really that big disparity. So if you're kind of looking at like the lessers, well, then you got like Kelly Wentworth and Monica, basically. But other than that, it's all, they're kind of on the same tier, because at the top end, I'm not sure there's a big star. The biggest star would probably be like, Kelly Wigglesworth maybe. But other than that, and then I'd say, Spencer and Joe probably, at least in terms of popularity, right?
Sure.
But it was all middle. So there wasn't like a bunch of people getting together. It's like, we got to get rid of this person because they're such a big threat. Other than, like 6 people doing that to Vetus. So it wasn't like, that's the strategy. The only way us, this group of people can survive is if we get rid of these targets. Whereas Heroes versus Villains, it's kind of the other thing. It's like, hey, they got rid of Randy and Sugar and stuff first. It's because, it was mostly big name stars. Other than like a Candace and a Denise and like, Randy, even Sugar was the star of her season, for better or worse. So again, it wasn't like we got to target the big names, because it's like, well, I'm the big name. So I think it's like, either you're doing all stars or you're doing second tier. And as Cambodia showed, second tier is great.
Yeah.
If they're all second tier. But and we thought there's so many stars this season, but it turns out, there's still so many not stars that they can use that as a rallying cry, which is of course why all these years I wanted an all-winner season. Is because I wanted to eliminate that as the reason so that we could maybe get some level of competition that is more equal. Now, obviously not all winners are built equal, but at the very least it can't be like, let's target the winners, or even in this case, let's target the winners / best players.
Yeah, and the people that got voted into Cambodia were, fairly popular players. We've got 2 of them on this season that didn't get voted into Cambodia. How's that working out for us? Brad and Troy.
Yeah, I almost wish we had voted them in. So they wouldn't have been around to screw all this up.
Yeah. Brad and Troy, who, by the way, are now aligned. You know why? Because they both have a dong. Troy has a lot of one.
Yeah, he's got enough for both of them. I mean, obviously that's not ever a scene we're going to get excited about, especially because it's a scene containing Troy. I'll say I don't have a huge problem with it. Actually, it probably is. I don't have a huge problem with it when Brad says it. When Troy says it, it's like, oh, shut up, man.
Yep.
Because, like, if it was two ladies in a tribe full of men and they were like, we gotta look out for one another, I'd be like, yes, you do.
Yep.
So it's like, I understand why Brad, maybe not terrified of it in the way that, Troy seems to be. But at the same time, it's like, well, that's a way I can bond with him. In the same way that, like, that person lives near me.
Right. I think that was the selling point, was Brad wasn't saying as like, oh man, we gotta watch out, these women are gonna take us out. But he was saying, hey, I bet it would work with Troy if I went up and said to him, hey, it's just us guys, we gotta stick together. And it predictably did. Felt more like Brad reading the room rather than that being Brad's line of thinking and his strategy. It was just more like, how can I get Troy on my side? This is how.
Yeah, and it just makes me think, like, I think I'd be okay if Brad Culpepper was taking over a second chance season. Because then I'm like, oh, look at that. Brad is one of the best players out there. We just didn't know. And again, he might be one of the best players this season, but it's like, I didn't come here for Brad and Troy, man.
Nope.
I came here for stars. You promised me stars, and they're all going away. It's like, the best we can hope for is them to show up at a reunion.
Well, not the best, because we had another star show up this very episode in a surprise cameo appearance.
Yeah, that was something.
We should talk about that, because the person that we assumed that we were getting, and I think the odds-on favorite that we discussed last week, was Boston Rob, and I had suggested that you might need a little bit of alone time. Send the family and kids away, to dim the lights, get your Boston Rob in. You didn't get that. Instead, we got someone that, a few people in our audience, maybe a fellow podcaster, needed a little bit of time alone to enjoy. John Cochran.
How did we not guess that?
Seriously, I think he would have been, 75th on my list. I don't know why, because I know that the show and Probst love him. It just didn't seem to fit any sort of narrative that would fit with this season. And surprise, it didn't.
Not at all. That was so dumb. I mean, this is, the most Cochran-friendly place you will ever find on the internet. And even I'm like, really? Cochran?
Yeah, and this is the thing, is I'm not complaining at all that we got to see Cochran again, because I love Cochran. It's just, how did this fit at all? It was just a very confusing thing. Like, what was the goal? Cochran was gonna be your coach?
If you're gonna have a coach, just have freaking coach.
Well, and not only that, but how are you gonna have a coach that hasn't seen the game? He's coming in blind. It's like, it's a basketball coach drawing up a play and he doesn't know which team you're playing against.
And it's like, I guess the benefit is Cochran would have seen, all but two of them play at least. Unlike other people, like, if it would have been Rob for this purpose, and he'd be like, I only know like three of you.
Is poverty on this season?
He's like, Sandra, just do what Sandra says she knows. He does watch Survivor now, but, even when he goes on to RHAP to talk about it, I get the sense like he doesn't remember who any of the people are of the season he's watching.
The guy with the long hair, he's got a good strategy. I like him.
And Rob would have been ridiculous too. Like, the entire notion of bringing somebody back was stupid. But at least, that plausible, okay, he's gonna give Ozzy a pat on the back. Like, it's dumb, but that's something.
Yeah.
Whereas this was not something. And frankly, Debbie wasn't even the worst person this could have been. She's at least somebody who can, portray enthusiasm over this, She really, isn't giving confessionals Sophie watching Jack and Jill at this moment. She seemed excited. But imagine if, he was there to give tips to Sandra.
Or Tony. And first of all, Tony wouldn't even let him talk. He would have just talked over him and said, hey, you got a box of advantages? I'm going to take them all. It just wouldn't have allowed him to pick.
And Cochran were like, no. It's like, get out of here. Those are mine.
Then he dives into the ocean, swims on back to the beach.
And I'm going to tell people there were 10 advantages. Or he wouldn't, the producers would have made him pick one of the advantages, but then he would have told people it was the other advantage, and then maybe another group of people was the other advantage. Yeah, and Sandra would have maybe talked to him a bit, and then been like, don't you touch any of my food, John Cochran? But, who would have been the best? If we're making this, this weird ass segment and we're trying to form it into something, who would have been the best choice?
I said it on Twitter, and the obvious answer is Ozzy, because you would get some like the office level awkwardness right there. Just Cochran saying, so I'm here to give you some, tips on how to win the game, and just Ozzy just dead eyeing him like, oh, you son of a bitch.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's one of those things that would have been like entertaining, especially in our minds. But ultimately it's like, well, yeah, but Ozzy isn't entertaining like that.
That's
so
true.
Maybe it still wouldn't have been good. But as you say, it could be cringy. It could be, Michael Scott, showing up, with the, laptop batteries for the kids he promised college educations to, like something like that. Spoiler. But yeah, I think Aubrey would have been fun.
Yeah, she would have geeked out. That would have been cool.
Yeah, maybe she would have squealed and geeked out like somebody had brought PB&J out. Zeke would have been interesting, because Cochran wouldn't actually have any idea who he is.
Yeah.
But Zeke would.
Hey, what would have been fun if it was Michaela and her question to him was, hey, who's that tall girl? What did she do?
Yeah, and he'd be like, well, first he'd be like, who are you? And he'd be like, oh, okay, you know stuff about Survivor? Tell me about these people. I've been there for a while and I still ain't got no clue.
And Michaela is a fan of Survivor, by the way. It's just, that's what makes it even funnier that she doesn't know who Sierra is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, she is a fan. She's watched, but, she's somebody who's missed seasons here or there.
Sure.
Yeah, like she said when she was catching up and studying, she just watched YouTube clips like you friggin' millennials. But has it been too many twists?
I don't know that the twists have yet submarined the game. There's certainly, it seems like, so many potential advantages out there in play right now between the idols, the legacy advantage, which is so easily forgettable, and now Debbie's advantage. It seems like there's a lot to keep in mind, not just, what the tribal dynamics are, but also who has an advantage that could potentially be used in this situation. How could it somehow benefit them or hurt the other side? It's just, it is getting a little bit too much narratively, I think.
Yeah, I kind of am starting to be sympathetic to the idea that it's just too much, We're not people who poo-poo these things, but, any of them in isolation or even in some level of combination would probably be fine. But I think when they introduce all this, it's like, well, these are returnees, these are game changers. Let's, give them these tools and do these things and see what happens. And, great season can result. Let's see how these players play.
Yeah, they can handle it.
There's a lot of stars, so we need more than one ball. But I think what's actually happened is it's just added too much randomness to everything, right? And sometimes when you get randomness, you get exciting things, and sometimes when you get randomness, you get the rise of Brad, Troy, Sierra, Don, Thomas, and Sarah, right? Because it's like, you don't even necessarily need to be good, Debbie drew a parchment that had no buff in it. Sierra, Don, Thomas walked by an envelope that Andrea didn't see. So, and Ty, got swapped to a tribe where the idol was heading in the exact same way that the tribe he was at. Even though Jeff kind of told us that that's what they were trying to avoid that this season. Like, what the hell, man?
Yeah. And then one thing that's, I think, in favor of the case that there's just too many advantages or idols in play. The most interesting moments this season have mostly been generated by Sandra, and none of them involved, Sandra making a big move with an idol. There was no advantages in play. It was just old school. I'm going to flip a vote. Here's our tactics, those sorts of things. I mean, there was an idol in play when they got Malcolm out. But still, that was an entertaining tribal council, not just really for the idol play, but for everything that happened up to that.
Yeah. So it's like, I think maybe just too many just because, it almost disincentivizes playing well, which is getting back to the point I made about like, yeah, Brad could win and he could win really well, but it might not be interesting. Not just because, we didn't come into the season fans of Brad. I mean, I think I've demonstrated pretty strongly in the past a willingness to jump on board with the winning side. I've watched a lot of Warriors games this season.
Sure.
I'll say also, maybe the too many swaps.
I think the issue is that, as we talked about earlier, it's not resulting in any sort of shakeups in terms of voting.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe it would have just been fine. It's just these players have gone the other thing. But I feel like maybe 2 swaps is too many. And, it hasn't happened that often. I think this is the 3rd season where they've had 2 swaps. Cambodia, the 2nd swap really didn't matter much. We lost Woohoo, who cares? And then Gabon was like, come on, get this right, you idiots.
Yeah, Gabon was just trying to course correct, really, and didn't work.
But it's just like, because what it does is it disincentivizes keeping good players. It's like, we don't care about the tribe. This won't be the tribe for very long. So I feel like maybe like the swap is a necessary evil, and every season, or not every season, but most seasons we might lose somebody good, and it's just the cost of doing business. But when you do it multiple times, it increases the number of people who could be, taken out as a result of the swap rather than as a result of, poor gameplay or poor social play.
Right.
And it's like it was Sandra this time, but it was also kind of JT and Caleb, which obviously we don't care about, but still. Like, there's a lot of people whose ousters can be pointed towards, the swap. Although, JT has many other reasons why it could have gone that way. So it's like, I think, it's not a lot of data, but I'll say I don't know if you need it. Because frankly, what will happen is the next 20-person season, when they go 2 to 3, they'll just expect that it's going to go to 2 again. So maybe that's when you screw with them, because they're expecting it. But yeah, and the other destabilizing part of it, and why we're sitting here saying, oh, all these players we're excited about seeing, we've hardly seen, is when you're switching things up all the time, it's tougher to build narratives and establish characters.
Right.
So I think that was a mistake. I understand why the show made these mistakes, but I think, we're learning. We're learning from these mistakes. It's like just a little less.
Yeah.
A little less trust the story, especially when you have All-Stars.
And I think that's the nice thing about this show, is that you have confidence that if this is a mistake, and it feels like it at the moment, they'll learn from it, and, they'll tweak things. They won't repeat the same mistake. It's generally, that's the pattern. They learn from their mistakes and change things up.
What do you think about Ty finding 2 idols in like 3 in 3 days? Good for him, right?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Credit to Ty, because I don't imagine all his time is out spent looking for idols. He does seem to have some social connections. He's not like some pariah who's just leaving camp all the time because, he's not got any bonds that can keep him around. So the fact that he, found that idol, which was a little tougher than some of the other ones were, and then immediately upon switching camps went, oh my God, what if there's also one here? Good on him. I don't know that necessarily every player would have thought of that.
Yeah, and I'll say, I think a lot of people are like, so-and-so is only good because they had an idol or something like that. That's such a stupid, thought, not just because it's like, well, no, they did other things, but also it's like, idols are part of Survivor, and ignoring idols is a choice that could backfire on you. I don't know why we can treat like somebody getting and using an idol as some kind of like gimmick. It is Survivor. And if you don't, adequately deal with idols, you will lose. And some of the best players have found that out. And, some of the worst players have evolved themselves. But I do think, finding idols and doing things with them is actually a laudable skill, in Survivor. It's not always necessary. Plenty of good players have been able to do so without, idols. But frankly, modern times, a lot of the people either winner or winner adjacent have had idols. So, if you're sitting around thinking, Ty's going out looking idols, but I don't need to, then you might not be playing Survivor right, for one thing. Or if you're not successful at it, then you're not as good at somebody who is. Like Jeremy Collins, one season he looked for idols all over the place and couldn't find them, and he went out right around the, middle of the game. The other season he looked for them and found it, and he wins. Yeah. So, idols do matter. And, people who can get them at the level that Ty can get them deserve some credit. Probably won't save him because of the deficiencies elsewhere in his game. But,
well, the nice thing with Ty having 2 idols is that now, much like Jeremy in Cambodia, he's got kind of that bargaining chip. He's got the luxury of being able to save someone else to build some trust and gain an ally. Worked for David last season, worked for Jeremy. Steven was all in on Jeremy after he got saved.
Might have worked for Ty already when he saves Sierra Dawn Thomas.
Exactly. And if he, further down the line, if he saves Brad, maybe that makes Brad think, oh, I gotta take this guy to the end with me. I don't know that it would, but I think he can use them as currency, and I think he probably realizes that he needs to do that. We can talk about how he screws up at tribal councils, but I think as far as using idols, he's probably going to be okay.
Yeah. it should be celebrated to a degree, but obviously this is an episode where we spent most of it talking about Sandra, much like this season. So it's prediction time, and you're not going to do one.
No, because the internet is terrible. I have seen what I believe is a pretty credible potential spoiler for the next boot, and so I'm going to sit this one out. I'm, hoping that I didn't get the right information. That'd be great, but just in case, I'm going to sit out.
Yeah, and it kind of feels like that's a story that's popping up a lot this week.
Yes.
Obviously, this is the danger of All-Star seasons, and I think this is a good opportunity for us to reiterate our spoiler policy, which, I mean, most people that frequent our site would already be familiar with it, but, as we've established, there's a lot of people who consume our products that don't necessarily comment all the time. No spoilers. Spoilers suck. Yeah. And if you happen to become spoiled, it's just like you possibly were spoiled. It doesn't necessarily make you a bad person. It's just you found something you didn't want to find, right? If you possibly are, then you don't talk about it. You don't vote in our weekly polls. Just let it slide because, we want to keep it spoiler free, as, most people I think listening do. If we think that you've been spoiled and you do that, if we find a spoiler on our site, it's gone. And the person who left it is gone. We have ways of banning you that way. So no spoilers. Leaving comments, or I'll leave a poll with this. If you think we should just skip the poll this week for predictions because of what seems to be rampant. I mean, frankly, maybe I'll come across something I haven't yet, so I get to leave my prediction now. But if you think that we should do that this week, let us know. But as we say, the voting pattern so far suggests that you guys are awesome and honest, which we should know about. So, my predictions.
Go for it.
So for...
Just call Pepper Tribe.
Sure, that one. I think it might be Michaela. Cause I think Aubrey and Michaela will be on the outs and Aubrey will sell Michaela out. I think that just seems to be the easiest pattern. I worry that it also might be Sari for all the, worrying that I've done.
Right.
But I kind of feel like, she was original, not mana, Nuku.
Sure.
And they have 3 manas. They got 4 original manas on that tribe. They've got Troyzan, they've got Haley, they've got Aubrey, and they've got Michaela. So if you feel like, the merge is coming soon, so Michaela's, challenge usefulness isn't that important. If the screws are coming down on her, she might not be able to hide the fact that she's displeased with that. And I think Aubrey will sell her out in a heartbeat, and good for Aubrey. She owes Michaela nothing. So, I think it'll be Michaela if they go to Tribal Council, but I think more likely, Nuku goes to Tribal Council. The preview is trying to make us think it's Ozzy. I can think of good reasons why it would be Ozzy, because of the stated goal seems to be to get rid of the exceptional, and he counts in this, matter. I could see, Zeke having a taste, for big game hunting after he's taken out Sandra. And that, setting himself up with allies like Ty and Varner would be good for him. But I think it's just going to be Varner, and that's going to suck.
Okay, and so we're running a little long this week. Let's plow through some plugs. PurpleRockPodcast.com is our site. We are doing an obnoxious Amazon ad campaign this month. Really sorry about it, but it'll be gone at the end of April. In that month, we'll be getting extra revenue from Amazon if you shop there through our link. So please do that. You can follow us on Twitter. The show is Purple Rock Pod. I'm Purple Rock John. Andy is Purple Rock Andy. And of course, you can subscribe to us at various venues, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, blah, blah, blah. Anything else, Andy?
Let's pay homage to the Queen one last time.